Well, hello, friends. Today, yet another cold and rainy and dreary day outside in the region. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of go back and look at some of my favorite books of 2022. Now, I know that this kind of video is not going to be for everyone, and that's fine. But I do like to suggest books that I feel were good reads this past year. And in return, I'd love it if somebody would make some suggestions, because I'm always looking for the next Jack London, if you will, or, just good suggestions. And I will say that this collection right here that I put together of my favorite reads of 2022 is a mixture of fiction and nonfiction. I have in the last several years been more pro nonfiction, but I had a few suggestions from friends and from YouTube on some good narrative stories. So without any further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's look at a few books that I thought made the cut for 2022. All right, starting out, let's check out Scott Kelly and his book Endurance. So Scott Kelly is a former astronaut for NASA, and he was part of the International Space Station groups. He went on several missions, and he even was part of the shuttle missions before those ended. But anyway, his book is an autobiographical detail depiction of his early life, time spent with a twin brother, and some of the things they got into as kids. But the majority of the book is about the time spent on the International Space Station. I found it absolutely fascinating and inspiring, and never really realized, the intensity of the job, the training, and the time spent away from not only family, but the conveniences of home. Home being Earth, and going to the grocery store and doing things like that. So he really portrays that well in this book. So if you're looking for some inspiration, I think Scott Kelly's book Endurance would be right up your alley. Another inspiring book, I think I got the suggestion from the Vagabond Brothers. They have a YouTube channel, and they do a lot of reads and suggestive reading. And so this book is called Tracks by Robin Davidson. And so I believe this was made into a major motion picture. I'm not exactly sure who the actors were. I haven't seen the movie. But the story is about a woman in Australia in the 1970s, 80s, during that time period, who did a trek about 1,700 miles across the continent of Australia on camelback. And the story is just fascinating. I actually like the lead up and the training to before the expedition actually started as much, if not better, than the expedition itself. But very inspiring that someone would take on, that kind of grueling, adventure, if you will, and kind of live to tell about it. I mean, we always hear about the dangers of the Australian outback, and between weather and and snakes and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, very inspiring book. Check it out sometimes. It's called Tracks by Robin Davidson. All right, so this book, or this author, was suggested to me from a friend. It's a work of fiction. The writer's name is Peter Heller. He's got quite a few works of fiction out there. But this book, The River, I thought it was very well written, and it flowed like a river. I read another one of his books called The Guide. I also found that to be enjoyable. But stories about, fictional stories about, things that happen on a river that are kind of mysterious with regards to coming upon other people, and Yeah, it was sort of a movie in your head type read, if you know what I mean. You know, you have those books that, you know, you just kind of see every detail and every ripple of the waves and just what the characters are thinking and feeling and going through. And he did a great job. I'll probably check out quite a few more of his books at some point. Also got a couple other books called Celine and the Dog Star. I'll probably check those out. So yeah, if you're looking for a good fictional read, kind of set in the outdoors, which most of his books are, check him out. Peter Heller, The River. And moving right along. Now this book right here is going to have to be a reread. There's so much information to retain in this puzzle that is Polynesia. The book is called Sea People, and it's by Christina Thompson, and it reminded me of the idea of how we think about or how we theorize where the Native Americans came from. So a lot of people speculate that, you know, they're from the Mongolian tribes, but this book is more about how the Polynesian people came to be, the people that live in islands in the Pacific. Where did these people come from? How did they get to these islands like Hawaii and Indonesia and places like that? If you think about the vast distance of the Pacific Ocean and where we were with regards to sea vessels, it makes you really wonder how they were able to discover these islands and live on these islands. So the author, she paints a picture of different theories on how these people get to these islands, and I just found it pretty fascinating. So Sea People, Christina Thompson. Check it out. Take notes. All right. Another work of fiction that I really enjoyed was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this could borderline be in the horror genre. I learned a lot, not from just the story itself, but how Native Americans live on reservations and, you know, some of the things that they deal with daily. But the book is about 4 teenage boys who go on a hunting trip, and so one of the boys does something on this trip that comes back to haunt them later in life. And so that's kind of the gist of the story. Don't want to give the whole story away in case you ever want to read it. But I found a new perspective on life on the reservation and certain beliefs and fears that Native Americans go through. But yeah, definitely probably on that horror edge of reading. And which is kind of interesting because when I first started become interested in reading when I was in my early teens, it was like Stephen King and Dean Koontz and all those guys. So I sort of was able to revisit that vibe, you know, into the horror genre. So The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Check it out. All right, so a lot of you may be familiar with this. This is called The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. And the reason why I say that this may seem familiar is that M. Night Shyamalan has made a major motion picture adapting from this story. And I've seen it the last few weeks being previewed on TV. I'll probably go to the theater and check it out. But here again, it's kind of apocalyptic, borderline horror genre. But anyway, it's the story of a couple and their adopted daughter spending, you know, a vacation in a cabin. I think in New Hampshire is where the setting, the story is set. And 4 strangers come upon the house and, you know, kind of force them into some situations that, you know, that they're not. You know, it's pretty intense. Let's just say that. Not going to give away the plot or whatever, but if you want a good, that same sort of movie picture rolling in your head story, fictional story, check out The Cabin at the End of the World. Or go to the movies and see the new M. Night Shyamalan movie when it comes out. So anyway, yeah, so that's just a few books that I've really enjoyed in 2022, but I wanted to save my favorite book of 2022 for last. And because it stuck with me the most, and it was just beautifully written. The imagery in it was vivid, and it was there. And but anyway, the book is called The Wild Trees by Richard Preston. And let me add that hardly any of these books were actually came out in 2022. They're just books that I read in 2022. So they're sort of all over the place when they were copyrighted and what have you. So, but anyway, The Wild Trees by Richard Preston is a fascinating book about a group of arborists and students in Northern California and Oregon who explored the redwoods, the coastal redwoods, and spent an enormous amount of time climbing these trees and living amongst these trees. Almost, you know, they would climb these huge redwoods, and they would spend the night in the canopy, and it was just absolutely fascinating. They were discovering trees that outside of the national park that had never been discovered. It really is hard to explain how much this book moved me. And I mean, it's you know, it's nonfiction. It's almost you know, written. It's sort of written in a narrative, but at the same time, it's like a journal of, you know, their experiences there. This is definitely going to be a reread for me. So, The Wild Trees by Richard Preston. Check it out. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little suggestive reading video. And like I said, if you made it to the end, I appreciate it. And if you do have some suggestions, I feel like you have the gist of the things that I kind of like to read. So if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. I'd love to check it out. And let's hope, fingers crossed, in the next week or two that we can get back outside and enjoy nature. But until then, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.